Buy bonds now. I cannot stress this enough. Buy some bonds, be it via Wellington Fund, Wellesley Fund, Vanguard Intermediate Bond Fund, Ginnie Mae Fund. Buy bonds now. And I'm going to share with you my reasoning here. It's just so blindingly obvious to me. And sure, I could be wrong, but I don't think so. All right, so everyone and their mom, inflation, I can't have bonds because of inflation. I get this all the time, all the time. Inflation's going to kill my bonds. And you're like, okay, what's the other side of that trade? Because if that is so true, what do you do when the market is going in one direction? All right, what do? You go the other direction because the market is going for one direction because that's where the sheep are going. You want to be the black sheep. But now we got to be the black sheep, not just for it to increase the value of our portfolio, but to protect it. And it's so blindingly obvious what is coming down the pike. I cannot stress this enough. And the thing that gives you protection isn't stocks. The thing that gives you protection is bonds. We'll go into this in more detail here in just a second. But first and foremost, when everybody is going that direction, you're like, yeah, that sounds like it's been overblown. I've done other videos too that inflation doesn't kill bonds. So we've done videos in terms of what happens in the years the rates go up. Yeah, bonds get knocked around a little bit. What happens the following years? They come back strong. Could that happen again? We don't know. We can't say because this happened, this will happen. But at the end of the day, you get a bad year in bonds. The next year, historically, it's just gone through the roof without question. That may or may not happen again. I don't know, but I think that's pretty significant. I'm willing to lay my hat on that for sure. All right, so we have two things going on. Bonds didn't get killed in the 60s and 70s. They didn't. I mean, they didn't make any money, I'll grant you, but in terms of they got destroyed in inflation, it just didn't happen. Again, you didn't make any money, but you didn't get killed. That's two. We got to. Not making money is not the same as not getting killed. Bonds did not get killed in the 60s and 70s. They just did not, my friends. I've done videos on this time and time again. Bonds did not get killed in 94 when the Feds were raising. They did not get killed in 99 when the Feds were raising. Was it 2013 or 15? I think it was 15, something like that. They didn't get killed. They had down years. You lost money. In the fall years, they all came back strong. So that's point number one. All right, so now point number two is just think about your own household. All right. If you're a debt-laden household, what does that mean you can't do at some point? You can't keep borrowing to spend. You have to pay your bills at some point. All right? Think about it. If you're heavily leveraged, you cannot keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing to finance your consumption. You can't. What does that mean? Is that inflationary or deflationary for your spending? It's inherently deflationary. You cannot buy more goods if your balance sheet is through the roof or your asset base is through the roof, heavy in liabilities and limited in assets. You can't. The bank's going to say, no, we're not going to allow you to spend anymore. All right? So what happens is we have a debt-ridden society, completely encompassed with debt, starting with the federal government and starting with the state and local governments too. All right. So what happens is people say, yes, but Josh, the federal government, who is debt laden, not debt ridden, debt laden, they can continue to print and spend and spend and spend. Huh. Yes, they could. So what's been happening since the 1930s? The government has printed and spent, printed and spent, printed and spent. All right. So our debt's just accumulated year over year, except for small years in like the latter part of the 60s or 70s, I can't remember. And then in 3 years under the Republican Congress with Clinton at the helm. That's it. We've taken on deficits as far as the eye can see. We've accumulated debt. Remember, deficits just add to our current debt. That's as far as the eye can see. Those days are coming to an end. Now, we're never going to pay the debt off, and we'll probably never go to a surplus, but we're not going to continue the way it's been going. I'm going to show it to you in just a second. So when the government stops the spending, right, your household stops the spending, what does that do does it grow the economy or does it stifle the economy's growth, economic growth? Now, a lot of people say, well, government spending actually hurts what's called crowding out. It actually hurts growth because you're basically you're spending money on inefficient assets taken away from businesses. And I absolutely agree with that 100%. But what's been happening is the consumer, the end line consumer, you and I, the households, been getting the largesse of the government spending, and those days are coming to an end too. So let me show you something. I find this. So anyway, what do you think about it? When the government stops spending as much as they previously did, what does that mean? That's not inflationary. That's deflationary. That's deflationary. Deleveraging is deflationary. It really is. So what are stocks and what does deflationary mean? Or even deleveraging, disinflation, but what does that mean for economic growth? Does it mean there's growth or does it mean there's recession or even depression? What does that mean for stocks? What do stocks rely on? They rely on a growing economy. That's why we always say stocks are a hedge against inflation, which I've never subscribed to. That idea that stocks are a hedge against inflation. What? Where's the evidence of that? In the 1960s and 70s, stocks were not a hedge against inflation. You still lost money in the stocks too. You got smoked in 73 and 74, and I think again in 78. And then the 80s came around. Inflation was under control at that point, and stocks took off like a freaking bat out of hell. But previous to that, inflation, stocks did not provide you a hedge against inflation whatsoever. None at all. Gold certainly didn't. I mean, I guess it did once they got rid of the false, the ceiling of the Gold Confiscation Act of 1933, or not an act, the Gold Confiscation Executive Order, and Ford got rid of that. That's a fake one though. But at the end of the day, stocks rely on a growing economy. If there is no growth in the economy, what happens to stocks? Do they continue to go up? Well, no. I mean, they could, but the idea that stocks are a hedge against inflation, we don't have any evidence of that. But what stocks need is a growing economy to continue to expand and to continue to increase profits. When an economy starts slowing down and even go into recession and deflation, stocks don't grow there as well. But you know what does give you the bulwark against deflation, recession? Bonds. 100%. Just look at the 1930s. Deflation was rampant. Stocks got smoked. You know what did well? Bonds. Bonds did. 100%. So during inflationary times, bonds, yeah, they get smoked for a year, but they come back. They get smoked for a year, they come back. You're not going to make any money, but you're not going to get smoked. Stocks get smoked. During deflationary years, the 30s, stocks got smoked. Bonds did not. Now, again, I'm encouraging you to recognize this isn't a growing, you're not growing your asset base here, but you're protecting your asset base. So I want to show you a couple things. Disinflation is a bigger threat than inflation. I could not agree more. And so here you got your year-over-year change in CPI, all index, all items, year-over-year. This goes back to 2009, a little bit of deflation, right there, huge inflation, year-over-year. That's year-over-year. Now let's go month-over-month. Interesting. What is that a sign of? Is that interesting? So we've actually gone down to 50% in month-over-month inflationary things, all right? Given the correlation between interest rates, inflation, and economic growth, there are several reasons to expect disinflation in the month ahead. Yeah. All right, I want to show you something else here. Artificial inflation is unsustainable, 100%. The measure of money in the system, known as M2, is skyrocketing, which certainly supports that concern that persistent inflation is here. Now the Biden administration adding another $1.9 trillion in the economy, these concerns have risen, all right? Well, check this out. Hold on just a sec. There is a chance that the macroeconomic stimulus on a scale close to World War II will set off inflationary pressures on a kind not seen in a generation. I worry that containing an inflationary outbreak without triggering a recession could even be more difficult now than in the past. And that's exactly right. Trying to contain an inflationary outbreak without triggering a recession is going to be freaking impossible. Given that it takes about 9 months for increases in the money supply to hit the economy, we see the inflationary spike. However, as soon as shown, given that fiscal policy is absent, i.e. the Congress, the extended benefits have expired. The money is spent. Disinflation will assert itself. All right, so I would worry that containing inflationary outbreak, which we're dealing with now because of previous freaking government spending, without triggering a recession, could even be more difficult now than in the past. They're not going to be able to do this, man. And again, given it takes about 9 months for an increase in the money supply to hit the economy, we are seeing that now. But given now the extended benefits has been spent, there is no tax cuts coming to the savior to save us from the fiscal aspect of the Congress. So fiscal is Congress, monetary is Fed. Disinflation will assert itself. Yeah, 100%. So you can see right here, monetary growth. Look at that, shoosh, right up there. Monetary growth. Now look, it's not like the monetary growth wasn't expanding in 2009 and 10, but look at that, huge M2 monetary growth going through a. You see that? See the drop in monetary growth? All right, here's the CPI through the roof. All right, what you think is going to happen now? Oh, and we can see. Well, we have some right there, month over month, CPI. Isn't that interesting? All right. Disposable personal incomes, less transfer payments. So transfer payments, this is the issue I take with the freaking Census Bureau and all this stuff. They don't look at transfer payments, i.e. welfare checks, and I'm not sure about Social Security. Because Social Security is an entitlement, not welfare. But I don't know. But I don't know if they take that into account. I can't remember off the top of my head. I've researched, I just don't remember. But anyway, transfer payments are welfare. So here's the average right here. And you can see over the last 5 to 6 years or so, we've been well above the average, well above the line there. Dropped pretty significantly because of the initial pandemic, and then we're below it again. All right, so personal income, the money's been spent. Just going back to what my man said right there. The money has been spent. M2 supply is dropping like a brick in water. The month over month of inflation, all this leads to an economy that is not growing. All right, so I want to share with you something. Debt is deflationary. And never mind demographics. Debt and demographics is de-inflationary. So D plus D equals D squared, huh? D plus D equals deflation. D plus D equals D. There you go. Over the coming decades, the massive surge in unproductive debt will increase deflationary pressures and slower economic growth. I just want to point out, too. All right, so you think about now, if the stock market is contingent on growing economy, and people are basically doing this, saying, I'm leveraged out. I don't have any more money to buy. I don't have any money to buy these houses. I'm going to read you an article from the Wall Street Journal here in a little bit off a different video that it boggles the mind, the level of, if I hate to say it, but idiocy that some of these people are doing to show their wealth. It's crazy to me. It's nuts. Anyway, the point being is, as the deflationaries kick in because of the economy slowing down and the amount of leverage that people have, still you got to pay the bills, man. Did you know that Thomas Jefferson died owing mountains of money, by the way? Did you know that? So who was in control of Thomas Jefferson? The debtors, the debtees, the lenders, I should say. The debtors are the slave to the lenders. So Thomas Jefferson had all this debt. Who was lending him the money? And do you not think they controlled his ability to do whatever he wanted? Of course. All right, so the point being, so if people stop having enough money to buy discretionary products, they're still going to pay more and more for your day-to-day stuff, food, electricity, 100%, gas in your car. All that money will be focused on that, and that will probably increase prices on those goods, but other goods are going to drop through the roof. I mean, again, I hate to say drop through the roof. We don't know. Or through the floor. We don't know. But what happens is just like they enacted a yacht tax. All of a sudden, that ripple effect made everything else become, people just, they went out of business because the ancillary products to the yacht itself got destroyed because people could not pay for the yachts. So when people can't pay for the good stuff, i.e. the discretionary spending, the jobs that go with it go away too, which is inherently deflationary. But it's not just like you can now pick up and say, now I'm going to buy cheap goods, because they're not being made anymore. Those companies go out of business. Deflationary. Yes, inflation on these products, this is what stagflation is. Inflation on these products that you need, deflation everything else, stagflation. Ultimately, though, what happens is the producers can't produce because they're not getting a profitable freaking price for their products. They go out of business. Deflationary. Deflationary. I'm just telling you. Never mind demographics too. It's so blindingly obvious. And in deflationary times, bonds rule the roost. Again, it's the what is it? You know, the tallest among the midgets. You know what I'm saying? This is where we're going. And if I'm wrong, well, so what? Then you're not going to get killed in bonds. I've already shown that 1,000 times a Sunday. You don't make much money, but you don't get killed. Bonds are your true hedge against what's coming down the future, man. Let me just show you something else here. Hold on a sec. We've been plaguing we've been plaguing economic growth for the last 40 years because all the debt we've spent, all the debt we've accumulated. Given the baby boomer generation has reached retirement age, they'll leave a workforce at an increasing rate, drawing down their accumulated financial assets. As a result, the debts and deficits will continue to detract rather than contribute to economic growth. As shown, the surge in debt and deficits coincides with a peak in the 10-year average economic growth rate. 100%. I 100% agree with this guy. The negative impact on the economy is evident. There is a significant negative correlation between the size of government and economic growth. Debt is the problem, not the solution. The slow reduction in economic growth and the standard of living is even more insidious. Excessive indebtedness acts as a tax on future growth. It also consistent with Minsky's concept of Ponzi finance. The means and size and type of debt cannot be added. The means and size and type of debt being added cannot generate a cash flow to repay principal and interest. Yeah, 100%, man. And you can see all of these economists say, I don't care. It's so blindingly obvious. The artificial inflation from the flood of liquidity against a supply shortage will revert to a disinflationary trend. Debt and demographics will continue to drive deflationary pressures, leading to a reversal of the inflation trade. Yep, I 100% agree. And if I'm wrong and you're in bonds, you will be none for the worse. If I'm right and you're in all stocks, you're gonna be bad. Yeah, you'll be smoked. You won't be able to recoup from this if you're about to retire. Now, I still buy dividend stocks. I'm still in VTI or VTV, because dividends can give you that deflationary hedge because you're getting cash. That's if the dividends continue to get paid, and I firmly believe I expect. But I tell you, man, if you're about ready to retire a couple years out, man, I would be looking hard at some friggin' debt assets. Not risky, long-term, high-yield stuff. No. Sacrifice short-term growth for long-term protection. All right, love to hear your thoughts. We'll see you.